Hello, and welcome to episode 91 of TBR, the To Be Read podcast, where we talk about the books we love and the topics that interest us. I'm Patrick Stemp, and as always, I have John Monk here with us. How you doing, John?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And Michael's having some internet problems apparently tonight, so P.T. Hilton was good enough to jump on and join us for the fifth or sixth time, I'm sure.
Hello, it's been a while, and I imagine you guys were like, who would not have any social plans ever that we could call at the last second? It would for sure be here.
Yeah, you're not too far off the mark, actually, and we've missed your bookshelf. I always like looking in to see if you've got anything new back there that I like. So tonight we're going to be, I think we titled the show Attack of the Recommendations or something similar. So tonight is supposed to be our second sort of book of the month club chat where we all read the same book and we're going to talk about it. This month, the read with this month was Stan Lee's Zodiac Convergence, book one in a series, and all three of us tried to read it. And what we're going to be talking about tonight is the difficulty with recommendations when you don't enjoy the book that was recommended. One of our sort of avid listeners, and Amber, who was nice enough to send this book along as a recommendation for us, and as I mentioned last week, we kind of struggled a little bit with it because we weren't enjoying the book terribly, and we don't want to hurt Amber's feelings, and we really do appreciate the recommendation from her, but I think it's a good conversation to have. So that will be our topic for the week after we do our weekly roundtable and talk about what we've been reading lately. And PT, do you want to go first? Have you been reading anything interesting lately?
I have. I've read a couple things. I read. So I just finished this book called New Jack, which is about this guy who. It's a nonfiction book. This journalist is trying to do a story about the Sing Sing prison, and they basically won't talk to him. So he goes undercover and becomes a guard there, and is a guard at Sing Sing, the maximum security prison, for a year. And it's like about his experience of working as a guard in this crazy prison for a year. Super interesting book if you're at all. Like I always have this weird little fear of being like falsely accused and going to prison. So it was like a terrifying book for me. But it was a very fascinating book. I highly recommend that.
So are you reading that for research or just for fun?
Just for fun mostly. I think there's a couple things that I might pull out and stick in something or another, a story or some story or another.
Cool. I'll tell you because I think probably two of my all-time favorite genres, especially with movies, are heist flicks and jailbreak, like Shawshank Redemption.
I love that stuff.
Cool Hand Luke.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the guy in Cool Hand Luke, crap, I was reading about him earlier today, and now I can't remember his name. But the guy in Cool Hand Luke, who fed him the eggs and beat the crap out of him in the yard, he just passed away recently.
Oh yeah. One of the points in the book is that if at any time if the prisoners organize themselves, they could easily overthrow the prison or whatever. It's pretty rare that a prison riot happens, but it could, if prisoners could ever just organize, that could happen at any time. So that's one of the big stressors of being a guard, is just knowing you're so vastly outnumbered and could be overthrown at any moment.
So do the guards play on the racial tension and the gangs and all that to kind of keep them focused on each other and not banding together against the prison?
Oh yeah, that's a big part of the book too. Is that he's goes in with some very high-minded ideals about the way people should be treated and things like that, and he really struggles with it once he gets in there and sees what you have to do to survive as a guard and stuff like that. So it's a lot of him wrestling with those moral questions kind of thing.
Cool.
So that's good. The other thing I'm reading right now is Lagoon by Nnedi Okorafor. I think I'm saying it right. Who's a science fiction writer who writes stories that take place in Africa for the most part. This one's really cool though. It's it's a first contact kind of story. The spaceship comes and lands in this lake in Africa, and slowly aliens start emerging and just interacting with society, and then kind of throws this whole society into chaos. And it's starting to. I'm not done with it yet, but they're starting to get to why they chose this particular country and stuff like that. And I think there's going to be some political messages perhaps as we get into it further. But great story and really good writing. And yeah, she's a great writer.
Okay. Is that it for your list then?
That's it for me.
Okay. I'll go next, I guess. So first, I'll mention. I think all of us have probably read the Story Grid by Sean Coyne.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read it, PT?
I have not. No, it's on my list, but I
Okay.
haven't got to it yet.
So, but if you don't feel like reading it right away, I was just going to mention, because a lot of our listeners probably have read it. I just discovered that it's actually a podcast too with Tim Grahl.
It's good.
It's really good. So Tim Grahl is basically interviewing Sean Coyne as he's trying to learn to become a writer himself, and interviewing him basically about all those questions that he has about the Story Grid. And it's one thing to read it. It's kind of a dry read, but very but very good. But hearing Sean Coyne actually talk about this stuff is really cool. So I've been listening to that after enjoying the read of the book. So I read the second book in Marcus Saki's Brilliance saga, which is A Better World, and loved it. So I talked about Brilliance last week, I think. This is just a fantastic series. The writing is just crisp and clean, and he tells a really just fast-paced story in a really interesting world where, starting in the 80s, about 1% of all children were born with enhanced abilities of some sort. So not like, X-Men type stuff, but they are, smarter, better, faster, that kind of stuff. And anyway, this book picks up a little bit after the first one ends, and the one thing that kind of I didn't like about this book is that it ends on a serious set of cliffhangers. Every single plot line that gets picked up in this book ends with it unresolved, for the most part. So I'm not a huge fan of cliffhangers. I really don't like cliffhangers. I don't mind the ones where the main plot points are wrapped up, and then maybe there's one little tidbit to kind of get your interest up for the third book. In this case, pretty much everything is left in flux. But I enjoyed both books enough that I'm more than happy to let him off the hook on this, because first of all, because the third book's already available. I'd be pretty upset if it was coming out in 6 months or a year and I had to wait. He has had to eat some one-star reviews, because of this. But if you read the first book, I'm sure you'll love the second book as well. And I've started reading just like the first introduction in that for book 3, which is Written in Fire. So I'm looking forward to that. I started reading Mutation by Nerys Wheatley, which John, I think you posted something about.
Yep.
So I checked it out because it's a zombie story, and I'm about 25-30% of the way in, and enjoying it a great deal so far. Talk more about that next week. I'm sure I'll be done it by then. And I also started reading Midshipman's Hope, which we can talk about a little bit in our discussion about Attack of the Recommendations. I'm just kidding. I haven't finished it yet, but so what have you been reading, John?
Wow, that was funny, because that's like my favorite space opera. It's one thing to hate Misenchanted Sword, which I think you're going to talk about. It's another thing to go after Midshipman's Hope. Real quick, PT, I always knew that you were criminally minded since the first day of your first book, Regulation 19. If you're ever interested in some really good prison-type documentaries, National Geographic had one called Hard Time, and I think there's another one that's a spin-off of that. What am I reading? The reason I'm filibustering is because I've been doing nothing but really editing of my latest dumb book that I've been writing. So I've been editing that a lot. I've been rereading my own crap, basically. However, I have also tried to pick up, I have an obligation, a beta read that I've been dying to get back to. It's actually really good, by Aaron Sykes, Gods of New Orleans, which I think is supposed to come out maybe in April or May. It's ridiculously deep at times. There's this, it's constantly with this racism, and black people are oppressed and the white people are oppressed, not by black people but by the class system that they have sort of back in the, what is it, like the 30s, kind of the Al Capone kind of era, an alternate universe. The writing is very much like that period. I talked about that before, but the depths of the whole sort of racial tension and everything, I usually don't get into those kinds of like racial tension books, not that I've read a lot. I mean, I like the Amistad, but I was just sort of floored by that because I didn't expect that coming from it. The last book was more like kind of like a Hitler kind of thing that was going to happen in the United States with like people being rounded up, Jews in fact, and this one is like a lot of stuff about like Southern racism and things like that.
What's the first book in that series called?
It's called Gods of Chicago, and that's for sale right now. Yeah, it's actually much larger than Gods of New Orleans. I think it was a serial that he had kind of flumped together into a big book. So I'm not sure if he'll keep it that way, or if he'll try to like maybe balance out the series and have it in 3 parts. That's entirely up to him, but it was also good.
Cool.
That's it for me.
Okay. So then we will move on to our discussion of the week, which should start with sort of the whole point of our Book of the Club and monthly discussion. Unfortunately, Michael couldn't be here for it. Unfortunately, for one of the reasons being, I think he enjoyed the book a little more than either John or I did. So again, this is Stan Lee's Zodiac Convergence, and we'll get to that in a second. But PT, I'm assuming that you haven't read it.
I'm not, but I think
Okay.
it's good because I can kind of be the be your counsel. I won't be swayed one way or the other. I can give you some wise, objective words, maybe.
There you go. So, a couple things about this book. So, first of all, it's really difficult to tell how much of a hand Stan Lee had in this book because it's also credited to another writer, and I should have written down his name before we started the show, but I didn't. I can try to get to Goodreads and figure that out. I have a feeling in this case that Stan Lee came up with the idea and this other guy wrote it.
It's interesting that you say that because that's kind of the with Stan Lee. There's a lot of accusations going back. That might have been the case with many of his creations.
Okay, because first of all, I could be completely wrong, but I don't see Stan Lee sitting down and writing a book. And based on the other things that are in this other guy's sort of list, like on his author's page on Amazon, I kind of get the feeling that this is the kind of thing that he writes. I think he's done the novelization for Captain America: Civil War that's coming up, if I'm not mistaken, and some things like that. So the idea behind this story is there's a kid in Hong Kong. He's on a school trip and they're at a museum, and he gets distracted in this museum and finds out that there's something going on in the bowels of the place where basically there's this guy who is trying to take zodiac power. So do you remember what it was called, John? The disc. Basically, it's a disc with like the 12 zodiac symbols. Horse, rat, rabbit, ox.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was called. So.
And he is taking the power of these symbols, the dragon, and basically he's trying to suck them all into his body so he can take them out into the world and give them to people of his choosing and be a really bad dude. This kid in school, I think he's in like grade 8, kind of stumbles upon what's going on, and this isn't spoilers. This all kind of happens in like the first 2 or 3 chapters. He stumbles upon this and gets involved and ends up getting one of these powers for himself. And then things kind of kick off from there. So there's this chase around the globe where they're trying to track down these other people who have accidentally been given some of the other powers. So the bad guy Maxwell wants them for his team, and these guys want them on the good side. And so there's a race to find all these people and sort of recruit them on their side. Anything else you want to add, John? Did I miss anything plot-wise? I don't think so.
No, you did not.
So where I land on this book is it wasn't for me. It's a cool idea. It's an interesting premise. I think it was poorly executed in the writing, and I think it's Disney who put this out. That somebody should have taken another look at the edit, maybe for just like word choice and sentence structure and things like that. and the characters. So I know one of the things that stood out for us, for example, is this kid on a school trip. He's an American on a school trip in Hong Kong, away from his family. He is Asian as well himself. Like his family, they're American Chinese. He gets involved in all of these crazy events, and he's been taken away by these people to, help train him to use his powers and to help save the world and all this. Anyway, so of course he calls home to let his mom know. Hey, Mom, I'm not going to be coming home. And her response to that is, well, you're in grade 8 now, so you do kind of need to feel free to go out into the world and discover. I'm not exaggerating here. Discover sort of who you are as a man. And oh, by the way, your grandfather died last night, so just call us when you're ready to come home. And so off he goes.
Wow.
Am I exaggerating, John?
No. It wasn't that quick. I think there were a few more paragraphs in there, but yeah, that was essentially it.
So that really, I think, stuck out for us as a moment. Like,
you know what my first moment? I'm not going to make you be the constant bearer of bad news, because neither of us wants to hurt anybody's feelings or whatever. But the first moment for me, and this is actually not quite fair because it's not a part of the genre. It's part of the genre expectation, but the first aha moment for me was the hover chair. I'm reading it and I'm thinking the guy's going to be sort of on a catwalk, or he's just going to be on the floor, standing around waiting for his powers. But no, he's flying around the hover chair above where all the science is taking place. So I had to adjust my thinking and say, okay, maybe it's not quite modern. So that was the first thing, and then I guess the second thing was literally, the call home to mom. And it wasn't the first such call home to mom. There was another one it wasn't really a call home, but this girl Roxanne, she's got this really deep in her life mother who cares about her so much. It's just ridiculous. She's putting up with so much to help her daughter. Finds out her daughter has a few powers, and then she freaks out and runs away and wants nothing to do with her. That's kind of a spoiler, by the way, and I'm sorry about that, but it really does lend itself to kind of like the first part, which is another reasons I didn't really like the stories, because there's a lot of repetition. There's these constant battles that don't seem to need to take place. Like, I shall now test you, and we will see whose power is stronger than the other. You now have my respect. You may join me, or I will join you. So that was constantly a repetition. The crazy parents were kind of a repetition. Despite all that, there are things I like about it. I like the pictures. I'd like to see more books with pictures. But
to drive the parent thing home too. I mean, so the rabbit, when she, our team goes to visit the parents of one of the girls they're looking for, and they're not well off, and their daughter hasn't run away. She's not missing. She's not in any terrible danger, but they have this strange conversation with the other characters where they say, when you see our daughter, please tell her that we're sorry. We wish we could have given her a better life, right? It's just so I think I almost kind of get the feeling that the author didn't know what to do with the parents, where
yes,
if you're going to have kids in a story and you want to put them in a dangerous situation, I think you either need to give them a reason to not want to go home, like they have terrible home lives and so they can just walk away and not feel bad about it, or have them taken against their will, or find a way to keep the parents out of it 100%. Like if all of these kids were overseas on a field trip and all of these terrible things were happening and they didn't have the means to call home and let their families know how they were doing, then that could be a worry for them through the story. Oh my God, my parents are going to be worried. I should be home by now, but I can't get to a phone. I can't, going the other way and letting them have that phone call. Well, it's not, the parents can either freak out and send the cavalry out to get their kids back, and that's going to just add complications you probably don't want in your story. So I think putting them in there at all, I think, was obviously dangerous, and it didn't work. And again, we don't want to we're not going to keep pounding away on this. I think we'll get to our point in a minute, but as I mentioned, some of the actual structure of the way it was written too, I think the sentence, and I sent this to you guys in email, the sentence that kind of did it for me was kind of along the lines of the guard pointed his gun up in the air and fired, which shot the energy blast up into the air. And I was like, well, no kidding. He pointed the gun in the air. Where else is it going to go, right? It's just those kinds of things that really pull you out of the story. And so for me, at the end of it, it didn't work for me. A cool premise, I think, that was just poorly executed. But there are plenty of people out there who read this book and loved it. Amber is clearly one of them. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, I can think of plenty of books that I didn't like that other people just, you know, adore. And, you know, unfortunately, this is just one of those cases where it just didn't, for a few reasons, work for us.
I just want to say one thing before PT filibusters. I just want to assure Amber that I actually liked the book, and then Patrick forced me into saying I didn't like it for his own evil ends. Okay, PT, what were you going to say?
I haven't read it, but Patrick said I had to say I hated it too. So no, I was just looking at the book on Amazon, and I saw it's on there. It's recommended for grades 4 through 7.
There you go.
So I didn't realize that when you were talking about it that it was like meant for to be a younger kids middle grade kind of book. Does that influence the way you rated it all?
Well, and so obviously, I mean, clearly it's YA, and actually one of the things we had said was that we got the feeling that we thought it was more middle grade, which clearly it is. It does and it doesn't. Like, yeah, I mean, I don't know that it excuses poor writing, right? But I think it obviously does, you know, sort of let you off the hook with certain story things, you know, with the story. He certainly doesn't hold back on the violence. There's not a lot of blood and gore, but I just, you know, I think still it could have been better. But I do, yeah. When you're reading a book that's for that age group, like another book, you know, a series that I really didn't like, you know, was Gregor the Overlander, which is written by Suzanne Collins, and that is middle grade, clearly. So it wasn't written for me. It wasn't written for somebody in their 40s who's read hundreds and hundreds of books, more than someone who's in, you know, 4 or 7 years old. But as writers and, you know, and readers, we sometimes want to check that stuff out just to kind of see what's going on, right? My wife did like the Gregor the Overlander series, but I didn't. And whatever, it wasn't written for me. Same with, you know, City of Bones and Divergent. 2 series I absolutely despised. But again, they weren't meant for me. But maybe that also says something about a series like The Hunger Games that wasn't meant for me either, but I did like it because the writing was clean. It is a good story told well. And one other thing I'll say, and then I'll let one of you guys talk, is just that I think one of the things I've found too is sometimes we're just not in the right place at the right time kind of thing with a book, right? So, you know, maybe I could pick up one of the problems with City of Bones and Divergent for me could be that I had just read the Hunger Games series and something else YA and something else YA, and then I got to these and I was just sick of the YA. You know, maybe I just needed a break from it. Leviathan's Wake was a book that I loved. I picked that book up probably 3 or 4 times, read the first chapter, and was like, meh, I'm not into this right now, before I actually finally picked it up and read it all the way through and loved it. So timing is sometimes a thing, too. Sure.
Yeah, I've been reading more and more middle grade lately just because my daughter now is 10, and she's been reading a lot of middle grade stuff, so a lot of times she shares her books with me, and it is amazing that there are some really, really good middle grade books out there, but also some that are not that great.
Yeah. And again, you know, but we've always been, I think, clear about this on the show, where we say, like, just because you don't like something doesn't mean it doesn't have value to someone else. I can totally see a kid who's into the comics and into those kinds of things, you know, this might be a fantastic book for them to see those sort of the comic book genre told as a chapter book. I could see a parent wanting to encourage their kid to read it and hoping to get their child who loves comics into reading something that's got a little more meat on the bones, and then hopefully they'll move on to something else too and keep reading.
Yeah. Dude, one thing that and kind of, I guess this is bleeding over a little bit into the other part of the topic, but one thing that I learned since I've been doing a lot of booktube videos the last year or so, and man, when I first started doing those, I'd kind of get offended if people would disagree with my takes on a book I really liked, and it took, something that I've really learned because I think that's kind of natural because you love books and you like take them into your heart. You're like this book is speaking to my soul, and then someone else is like, oh man, that book sucks. And
Well, and
part of you wants to be like, man, they're rejecting me.
that is, yeah, I totally agree, and I think that's why it's important because some people will say, no, that book sucked, I didn't personally like it, sort of thing, right? And others will say, PT, you're kind of a moron for liking that, and that's the wrong way, I think. But some people I'll go back to Justified, right? Probably my all-time favorite TV show right now. Man, there's people who hate that show. And if I read the 1-star reviews, I'm like, yeah, that guy's an idiot. That guy's an idiot. Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Some of the, especially when you get to 1-star reviews, when people are hating on something and they like, too many rednecks. Well, what did you expect? It takes place, it's in Kentucky. Like, there's going to be some rednecks, or too much swearing and whatever. But they don't like it. I don't care. It doesn't affect my enjoyment of the show at all, or book if that's the case. Stephen King gets lots of negative reviews. These Marcus Sagi books that I'm reading, not tons, but he's got 1-star reviews that don't make sense to me. But I'm not that person.
Totally.
Yeah.
Probably does it.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, John.
Every time I recommend a book to somebody and they don't like it, I guess that's getting into the topic. Every time I recommend a book to someone and they don't like it, like the Misenchanted Sword or something like that, it's almost as if they told me they didn't like The Godfather, So and it just doesn't make any sense.
I
to
thought
me.
you were going to say it's like they told you that they don't like you. That's what I thought you were going to say.
That's kind of it does feel that way. It's like it's almost like they're saying, oh yeah, you would like that. I would have liked that too when I was 4 years old. So that's why I felt real bad, kind of like coming on after somebody really nice and smart recommended something and I didn't like it. So.
Well, there's lots of stuff that people love that I don't like. Like I could not. Everyone raves about Breaking Bad. I watched the first. I watched the first season and a half of that show. It was the most boring, slow, plodding. So I look at that.
You're crazy.
That's one of those.
I gotta go pay.
And for me, that's and especially when people would recommend that show to me, they would say, you kind of got to suffer through the first season. It drags a little. It takes a while for them to get going. And I'm like, I don't have that kind of time. And, but I gave it a season and a half. I understand why people love it. I mean, it's very well written. The acting is great. But it just didn't do it for me. I like something that moves a little faster, that doesn't take 3 seasons to get to the bloody point, right? Mad Men, same thing. People love that show. I think what I've seen of it, like I think maybe the first season, great show, but I don't want to watch 7 more seasons of that, right? That's just not. I'm just not in the right place to enjoy that particular show.
Well, first of all, you're definitely wrong about Breaking Bad.
But no, I'm not saying Breaking Bad is bad. How can you? I mean, that's
right.
the thing. I mean, you have to be, how can you say that's the problem is when someone says, "Oh, Breaking Bad is shit." You can't say that. Like, clearly it's well acted, well written, won a ton of awards. You can't say it's bad. You can say I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't for me.
It really kind of picks up for a lot of people, I think, in around season 3 and 4, which is a long time to wait, but it gets really just incredible. It's so incredible that like a lot of people say it's like the best TV
Yep.
drama of all time. So
And that's the problem for me, is because I want to watch that show. I want to enjoy that show. I want to see the characters develop. I want to see how they take this character from what did they say? Well, whatever, but from being this science teacher to the drug lord. That sounds like something that would be interesting to watch, but I don't have 3 seasons to wait for it to get interesting.
yeah, makes sense.
Personally,
Yeah,
for me, I'd rather watch something else that kind of gets me there a little faster.
right. And I think that's the right to kind of steer this towards the topic. I think that's the right response, like to not liking something, and it's also like whenever somebody doesn't like something I recommend, my first response is to defend it or just like say, here's why you should like it. But that's probably the wrong response. The right response
Well,
would be
because
like,
we take the things we love personally, right?
You're
right.
so argumentative, PT.
You gotta, and I like that you're owning that you don't like Breaking Bad, even though it's terrible opinion. I'm glad that you're owning that terrible opinion.
Yeah. Um, like say Jim Butcher. It's like he writes the urban fantasy Dresden Files, and I recommend that to everybody. And yet I always have to say, give it till book 3, and I'm like, and it's like Patrick all over again. Like I got to sit through 3 books before I like it. You'll like it. You just will love it when you get to book 3 or 4. That's when he goes. That's like when he quit his job and he spent more time on his book or something, and it just went nuts. And every book since then has just been absolutely amazing. But I gotta it's very difficult to convince people into reading it, and it really hurts when they don't like it because I know they're never gonna share that wonder that I have. I want to share with people.
Yeah, and I don't know. We don't binge watch typically, so I think that's for some people, we don't have Netflix, cable, any of that, and maybe, and I don't think people. I had heard that Breaking Bad didn't really take off until that 3rd season or so, when it started to get really good, and then people could go back and binge watch the first couple seasons. And if we don't watch a lot, so when we choose what we're watching, we're very picky, right? So if I have a choice between watching an episode that's going to take 16, or a show rather that's going to take 16 or 20 episodes to get interesting, or a show that is going to, if I feel every one of those 46 minutes of the show, like if it feels like a 46-minute show, that kind of loses me a little bit. You want to watch a show where you're like, holy cow, it's over already, I want to watch the next one.
How about Better Call Saul? Have you seen that one?
No, I really, really like Bob Odenkirk. I've sort of been a fan of his for years, since he was on with David Cross. What was their show? Was it The Man Show?
Mr. Show.
Mr. Show, that's it. Their little sketch comedy that they did. Bob, he was also on Arrested Development, for an episode, where he played a psychiatrist, and a couple episodes actually I think he was in. But I've always got a kick out of him. I liked what I saw of him in Breaking Bad. One of the reasons I haven't watched Better Call Saul is I didn't watch Breaking Bad, so it wasn't that important to me to get into it, and I had also heard that it's a pretty slow-moving show as well.
No, that's just people who want to have explosions and stuff because they saw explosions in Breaking Bad. No, it's a wonderful, interesting. It's an interesting drama. Give it the first episode. It's a slow build in the sense that you get to know the characters. Heaven forbid we know the characters without an explosion every 5 minutes. So there you go.
To me,
the amount of the TV that we have going on in this house right now is The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
So we're rewatching Justified, and I will probably watch that again a 3rd time.
It's because it's got explosions.
There's an explosion in the very first episode, and then not so much afterwards. No, but it's a character study. I want to study this show some more. But our sort of TV viewing here, that literally is once a week we watch The Walking Dead, and that's pretty much it. All of the other shows that we used to watch, we stopped watching Gotham, we stopped watching The Blacklist. with the only other show I can see picking up when it comes back on is Person of Interest. So,
See, to me, Justified is much slower than Breaking Bad.
you think so?
Yes, yeah. I don't know why, but I like them both. I like Justified, but
It has its
see now,
fast moments, but it is kind of slow.
see now, you're wrong, PT.
fair enough. Fair enough.
I could totally see somebody watching Breaking Bad over again as a character study there. I mean, it's clearly there's it's kind of, and this has actually I think been said of The Walking Dead before too, and maybe some other shows, is not a lot happens in any one episode, but over the course of a season, holy cow, right? I think Breaking Bad is maybe one of those.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I don't know. See, Breaking Bad. The only reason I wouldn't watch it again, honestly, is I hated that guy's Walt's horrible wife. I mean, she served a purpose, and she was right to be angry all the time or whatever. She's always right. But I want to watch The Godfather because I like Michael Corleone, not his horrible wife. However right she is, that crime is bad. So that's just me.
I know I did get a little of that in the parts that I saw, and not just his wife, but his her sister, if I have the relationships right.
Marie, I love Marie. She's great.
Yeah, she's cool. You'll get to like her. She's got her issues, but she's cool. And of course, Hank. Yeah, even you, Breaking Bad hater.
Hank was the cop, right? The stepbrother, or sorry, the brother-in-law.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was cool.
Got the best story ever.
Give him a show. Give him a show. I'll watch that. He was really cool. He was, the snarky badass, and
he stays cool.
Yeah.
So until he dies, right? I'm assuming everybody dies in that show, don't they?
No, not everybody.
Anyway, so
what is death?
So I think we can wrap this up, unless you guys have any sort of final comments on book recommendations or any kind of recommendations that you like. Anything that I love you want to trash, John? No?
I don't know everything that you love, like at the tip of my fingers. I do hope that you like Midshipman's Hope. I would love to have, make sure you get in the right mindset when you read it, because I'd really love it if you, much like Amber would have liked that, you liked the book that she picked. I kind of would like that you would like the book that I picked. So that'd be nice.
we're gonna keep you in suspense until early April on that one.
Cool.
Okay.
Any final thoughts, PT?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to right now. There's I make BookTube videos. The BookTube SFF Awards are going on right now. So they just nominated a bunch of for the best novel of the year, best novella of the year, best comic of the year, all that stuff. And then for the next month or so, there's all kinds of read-alongs and special videos happening and stuff like that. So if you're interested in checking that out.
BookTube SFF, so like science fiction and fantasy specific.
Yes.
BookTubers who specifically talk about those kinds of things. That's cool.
Yep. So you can look for, I think they use hashtag BookTube SFF Awards. There's all kinds of stuff going on for the next month or so.
Okay.
So.
Cool. And you've been here plenty, but why don't you tell people where's the best place for them to find you? Is it on YouTube these days?
Yeah, you can go to YouTube, search for PT Hilton, or go to pthilton.com. That's Hilton with a Y, because I care. I don't know why.
Well, thanks again for coming and filling in for Michael, who has internet problems / was afraid to come on and talk about this topic tonight. So I tried to. Anyway, next week I don't think we know what we're talking about yet, so as usual you'll have to show up to find out. And thanks for coming. We hope you enjoyed the talk tonight. And thanks again, Amber, for taking a chance and recommending a book for us. We're sorry we didn't like it, but we do like you. So take care. We'll talk to you all next week, and have a good week of reading.
See you.
Bye.